I'm going to show you some cool animals today and teach you a little bit about them.
We're going to see all the animals.
What our zoos do behind the scenes in order to protect wildlife and their environment.
Flamingo.
Now, before we see any animals, if you look on the right here, we just went by two pathways. One is called Treetops Way, which is where you can see the orangutans, and the other one is called Monkey Trail, which is where you can see the gorillas, the bonobos, and a whole bunch of monkey species as well. If you look in front of the bus and a little to the left, you can see a huge exit sign there. If you walk past the exit sign, that's where you'll find the reptile house, the reptile walk, and the explorer base camp. If you want to see reptiles, amphibians, or insects today, most of those will be over there past the exit sign. Now, all those places I just mentioned are not visible from the bus, so definitely check them out later today if you have time after the tour. As we go down this hill, just some basic safety rules for the bus. You are allowed to stand up during the tour. Just please hold on to something, and please do not stand up on your seat. And also just make sure we keep all hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the bus, because we are going to have some tight turns, as you'll see on this hill. Another thing you'll see on the hill is how green the San Diego Zoo is. Most people picture animals when they think of zoos, but the San Diego Zoo is also a botanical garden, home to more than 7,000 species of plants, many of which are very rare and endangered. The San Diego Zoo is broken up into 8 different conservation hubs. Each one represents a different part of the world. And this section of the zoo that we're in right now is part of our Asia Conservation Hub, specifically Southeast Asia. So most of these plants around us right now are from Southeast Asia, and so is this first animal coming up on the right here. If you look way up on that rock ledge over on the rightish side of the habitat, that is a Malayan tiger there.
What?
Now, like all species of tigers, the Malayan tiger is unfortunately endangered, and that's why the San Diego Zoo is part of the Malayan tiger species survival plan. And we're involved in a lot of different species survival plans here at the San Diego Zoo. And those are programs where we collaborate with other zoos to try to increase the populations of some of these endangered species. We only have male tigers here at the zoo right now, but we're always in contact with those other zoos looking to potentially swap animals, so we can find the perfect matches for our male tigers to have cubs with. Now, as we go around this corner here, we're going to exit the Southeast Asia portion of the zoo, and we're hopefully going to see some animals from Africa down here. If you look out the right side of the bus, you'll see a big watery area down below. That place is home to the African river hippos there. Now, the hippos are actually a nocturnal species, so during the day they spend most of their time underwater, so it's a little tricky to see them from the bus usually. But if you look past the hippo habitat in that forest back there, there's a different animal from Africa that lives over there called an okapi. The okapi is a close relative of the giraffe. Not quite as tall, but if you do see it, you'll definitely notice the resemblance.
Where are they?
Although it looks like the okapi is not really out in the open right now.
Oh yeah, I can see his butt.
I do highly recommend coming back to see the okapi later, though. It's a really cool animal. It's very large.
He's under there.
It is another endangered species that lives here at the zoo. We are part of the okapi species survival plan as well. And our female okapi actually had a baby about 3 months ago. So if you come back on foot later, you might be able to see the okapi and her baby. If you're interested in staying up to date on any baby animals born here at the zoo, then I highly recommend checking out either our website or one of our accounts like Instagram, Facebook, whatever you use. There's probably a San Diego Zoo
what's
account.
this, John?
And anytime baby animals are born here at the zoo, or new animals come here from a different zoo, they'll get posted on there, some nice pictures and videos. It's a great way to stay up to date with what animals are here at the San Diego Zoo.
They're just running around.
Right is a special one. This is what's known as a mixed species habitat. There's multiple species living here together. That monkey that's going across the road there is a red-tailed monkey. But this habitat is also home to swamp monkeys, red river hogs, and spotted-necked otters. So 4 different species in total. Now as we go around this corner, we're going to see our second species of flamingo. The flamingos back at the entrance of the zoo are American flamingos. But these ones coming up on the left here are called greater flamingos, which come from Africa. And you'll see they're a little bit smaller, and they also have a much lighter shade of pink. That's the best way to tell them apart from the American flamingos. And then once we're past them, we're going to see another bird species coming up on the left. The white-breasted cormorants are next, which are sitting on these huge nests that you'll see in a moment. Now last winter, these nests were actually full of little cormorant chicks. But they grow up very quickly. It only takes about 3 months for a cormorant to reach full size, and then it's just a little bit longer until they're off on their own. Now these guys have been working on their nests quite a lot. They've been adding new branches, new twigs, things like that. They're also spending a lot of time with their mates. So I'm curious to see, we might actually have some more baby cormorants this winter. That one might actually just be starting a nest right there. So keep an eye on those cormorants if you're someone who comes here a lot. Now, if you look across the street here on the left while we go around this corner, you'll see some bamboo and some fences over there. Behind those fences up on the hill is where our exotic animal hospital is located, which was opened all the way back in the 1920s. And there's been some incredible work done there over the last 100 years. One of the most famous animals to ever check into that hospital was a special orangutan named Karen. Karen was born right here at the San Diego Zoo, but she unfortunately had a very small hole in her heart. And when she was just over a year old, it was becoming a potentially fatal heart condition. So the vets here at the zoo collaborated with heart specialists from UC San Diego Medical to perform the first ever open heart surgery to be done on any orangutan. It was a very complicated and difficult procedure, but it was also a huge success. Karen made a full recovery, and she still lives here, happy and healthy, more than 30 years later. So if you do go down Treetops Way later today, definitely keep an eye out for Karen and the orangutan. Now on the right here, we're passing some animals from the African savanna. You might be able to see some zebras in there. There's also that huge antelope with those twisty horns. It's called a common eland. It's the second largest antelope species in the world. And on the right here, we're passing some smaller antelope species. If you see some really tiny ones, those are called Spix gazelles. And if you see some with white stripes on their backs, those ones are called lesser kudus. So two different species of antelopes in there. And a little bit further up the hill on the left side of the bus, we're driving past the northern frontier section of the zoo, which is home to a lot of our Arctic animals, including one that we're hopefully going to see on the left here if we get lucky. This habitat is home to the polar bears. We're going to pull over right about here, see if we can spot any of the polar bears. Now these two polar bears are a great example of animals that are not here at the zoo as part of a breeding program or anything like that. The polar bears are rescued animals instead. We have a lot of rescued animals that live here at the zoo. These two polar bears were orphaned as cubs when they were about 6 months old. They were not going to survive out there in the wild on their own. They unfortunately lost their parents due to human activity. So they were brought here to the San Diego Zoo for a second chance at a full, healthy life, and they've lived here ever since. Now, if you can't see the polar bears from here, we are going to continue up the hill. You might get a better view of them from further up, but it's possible you won't be able to see them very much at all. And that's because whenever you look into these habitats at the San Diego Zoo, you're usually only looking at a section of the space that the animals have access to. These polar bears have a huge cave behind the scenes, which is nice and cool. There's all kinds of snow and ice in there for them to stay cool during these warmer times of the year. So it's possible they're hanging out back there. But we're about to continue up the hill. Like I said, you might see the polar bears a little better from further up. We're also going to pass a lot of cool animals on the right. So whichever way you look, hopefully you'll see something cool. This first habitat to our right is home to the bontebok. It's another antelope species. It has a bright white nose, so keep an eye out for that. There used to be less than 20 of these bonteboks left in the whole world. They were very close to going extinct. Thankfully today there's a couple thousand of them thanks to breeding programs and sanctuaries in Africa keeping them safe. On the right here, we're passing the Visayan warty pig, a very endangered species from the Philippines. There's only around 200 of them remaining in the wild today. And as we go further up the hill, we have another antelope species on the right here. This is the southern Gerenuk. Looks like there he is way at the back.
There he
He's got long legs and the long neck as well to reach the high up branches in the trees. And then at the very top of the hill, we're going to drive past the fluffy Chacoan peccaries here. Now these Chacoan peccaries are what's known as a Lazarus species. That means they were thought to be extinct at one point. They were actually only known to science through fossils, all the way up until the 1960s, when some researchers found some alive deep in the forests of Paraguay. They might look a little familiar to some of you, because they are a close relative of the javelinas that we have in certain parts of the U.S. Now on the left side of the bus here, we're driving past the entrance to the Skyfari. If you are in this part of the zoo later today and you don't feel like walking back to the front, you can hop on there for free. It'll take you across the zoo, dropping you off at the front. And it also runs the other direction. So if you want to come back over here to try and see any of these animals again, you can use the Skyfari for that. Now coming up on the left, we're going to drive past the mountain lion habitat. I see one of them sleeping on the rocks up there. She does live here with her twin sister, so keep an eye out for the other mountain lion as well. These mountain lions are a local species that you can find right here in San Diego, but they have a very wide range. They're found all across North, Central, and South America. And because of that wide range, they go by a lot of different names. You may have heard of mountain lions, pumas, cougars, catamounts, Florida panthers. Those are all actually the same species. It's all that same one that we just saw right there. Now as you go further ahead, we have a very elusive animal coming up on the right. We're going to drive past the maned wolf next, which is a really cool canine from South America. Has bright orange fur and some pointy ears, so keep an eye out for that. Doesn't come out in the open very often though, maybe just once or twice per day, so you have to get very lucky to see him out in the open. But even if you don't see the maned wolf, you might be able to smell one. Especially later on in the day, they mark their territory with a very skunk-like odor. So if you're ever in this part of the zoo and you pick up the smell of a skunk, it's actually the maned wolf that you're smelling.
Wow.
Now as you go a little bit further ahead, on the left side of the bus, we're driving past one of our few public greenhouses here. This is the Carnivorous Plant Greenhouse. And if you look out in front of it, you can see that little green sign that says Trail Begins Here. There's a lot of those Trail Begins Here signs around the zoo. And they have QR codes on them that you can scan to take self-guided plant tours. So if you're someone who really likes plants and you want to learn more about the plants here at the zoo, then definitely check out those self-guided tours. Now as we go just a little further ahead on the left here, we're going to drive past a very unique animal. It's called the African rock hyrax, those little fluffy brown ones. Now a lot of people will see the hyrax for the first time and mistake it for some kind of rodent, but they are not rodents, they are Afrotherians. Afrotherians are a very diverse group of mammals. Most of them come from Africa. It includes these hyraxes here, as well as elephants, manatees, aardvarks, tenrecs. Those are all different Afrotherians. The two closest relatives to that hyrax there are actually elephants and manatees, which might be hard to believe at first, but there's a lot of extinct species of hyrax that were much, much larger. Now on the right here, we're driving past the African lions here. Now the one on that close platform to us is named Ernest, and that's his sister Ellen on the platform to the left. Now these African lions do sleep for around 20 hours per day. So chances are if you were over here earlier, this is probably the exact site that you saw. Maybe they were just in a different spot. But if you're still here later today when the sun's going down, you might hear a very loud roaring noise. And if you do hear that, it's usually these African lions responsible. They love to roar as the sun goes down, and you can hear it from more than a mile away. So even if you're somewhere else at Balboa Park, you might be able to hear the lions. Now on the right here, we're passing a pretty elusive cat. This is where Ndiri the jaguar lives, so keep an eye out for her. She's got very good camouflage.
Oh,
But
there
look
she
in the
is.
trees, look in the grass. Actually, she's right up close to us, laying down in the grass here. Almost missed her. She blends in very well. And while we're passing her, I'm going to talk a little bit about this part of the zoo that we're in right now. This area is known as Elephant Odyssey, and Elephant Odyssey is a window into the past, showing us what California used to look like about 12,000 years ago. Now some of the animals included here might be a little confusing at first. We obviously don't have African lions or jaguars here in California, but if you went back in time, 12,000 years ago, their close relatives used to live here. There's an extinct species of cat called the American lion. It was a huge cat, much larger than those lions we saw back there, and it was one of the top predators here in California until up around 12,000 years ago when it went extinct. So all these animals that we're passing in this part of the zoo are close relatives of species that used to live where we're standing today. And there's two more of those coming up on the right here. We're passing the Baird's tapir as well as the capybaras, which are close relatives of the extinct California tapir and the extinct North American capybara, both of which used to live right here where we're standing until they unfortunately went extinct about 12,000 years ago. And like I said, this part of the zoo is called Elephant Odyssey, so we do of course have some elephants living over here, specifically African elephants. Now these elephants are a close relative of the extinct Columbian mammoth, which used to be the largest land animal in California until it went extinct about 12,000 years ago. Now this section of Elephant Odyssey is home to 3 male elephants in total. The elephants are usually a matriarchal species, which means every herd usually has an eldest female who's the leader of the herd, the matriarch of the herd. And she makes all the decisions for the herd. But one of those decisions is which elephants are allowed to stay in the herd and which ones have to leave. And when young males reach a certain age, they'll usually be dismissed from their herd, sent off to live on their own. That's what's happened to all three of these males here on Elephant Odyssey. They've all been dismissed from their herd. And when that happens to multiple males in the same area, they'll form what's known as a bachelor herd of elephants. It's a temporary herd of only males. They live together for a while, keep each other safe, learn how to survive, learn different things from each other, and then once they're old enough, they go off to find a new herd. Like I said, that usually involves younger males. Those three back there are pretty young. That one that we got a really good view of, he's 21 years old. He's the oldest of the three. And then there's two half-brothers that are 14 and 15 years old. That might not sound super young, but elephants live quite a long time. They're all less than half the age of this next elephant that we're going to see further ahead. But before we get there, we're going to drive past this building on the right. Earlier on in the tour, I talked about our animal hospital a little bit, but the elephants are too big to transport them all the way over there. So they have their very own Elephant Care Center, which is this big building right here. Now, it might look a little intimidating at first with all these large bars, but that is a necessary precaution when we're working directly with the elephants. And also, the elephants only go inside there if they feel like it. We just open up the doors and see who wants to go in. And usually as soon as the doors are open, all of the elephants will go straight inside. They know they're going to get a training session while they're in there, which is very fun for them, believe it or not. They are intelligent animals. They love to learn and interact with the care specialists. They get some treats while they're in there. They get some very important grooming done on their feet. And there's also scales in there so we can weigh the elephants, see how much they've been eating recently. If necessary, if we're going to give them a physical, we can get blood draws and things like that. So lots of important work happens there in the Elephant Care Center. Usually they're only in there for a short period of time each day while
Some
we're setting
birds
out
on the
food for
ground.
them.
Look, Jax.
Now, before we see our last elephant, if you're curious about these birds here, there's actually two species of pigeons living in there. If you saw some with gray chests, those ones are imperial pigeons. And if you saw some with dark blue chests, those were Nicobar pigeons. So two different species of pigeons in there. And then we're going to continue on ahead, and we're looking for our fourth and final elephant. She should be around here somewhere. This is going to be our only female elephant at the San Diego Zoo, and also by far the oldest at 45 years old. And it looks like she's going to be all the way at the very end of Elephant Odyssey here. Now you might have noticed that there's not very much food lying around on the ground in there. The elephants are very intelligent animals. If they were just eating off the ground all day, that wouldn't be very exciting for them. So their food's usually in these hard to reach places. Sometimes it's way up above the ground. Sometimes it's hidden behind obstacles. Sometimes it's buried underneath the ground. It looks like she might actually be sniffing in the ground right now, looking for treats that are buried under the dirt. So all these different ways that they can find their food keeps their minds nice and active throughout the day, gives them some problem solving to do, also gives them some very important practice and exercise using their trunk. They do use their trunk for pretty much everything: breathing, drinking, eating, cleaning themselves, always using that trunk, so it's important to get all that practice with it. And it looks like she is sniffing around down there. So there might actually be some treats buried underground. If she does sniff anything out, it'll take her a couple minutes to dig it up, so we're not going to stay here that whole time, but if you come back on foot, you might see it. I've seen her find whole zucchinis underground. I've seen her find a whole head of lettuce, a squash, lots of really tasty foods. So get a nice last look at Shaba here, and I'm going to talk about this building on the left. It's called the Butterfly Conservation Lab. That's where we do a lot of important research for protecting local butterfly species found here in California. One of the most common butterflies in this area is the monarch butterfly. It's a nice orange color. And growing up here in San Diego, there's always been a plant growing in my yard called milkweed, which is the only thing that monarch caterpillars will eat. So every year those monarchs return to the yard, they lay their eggs on that milkweed, and it's really cool to see those caterpillars grow and change into butterflies. But as the years have gone by, there have been fewer and fewer monarchs returning to California each year, and it was really shocking for me to discover that their population's gone down by more than 90% since the 1980s. And it is the case for several different butterfly species found here in California. Now when you visit the San Diego Zoo, it's easy to focus on animals like the elephants, or like the camels that we just went past here, but I don't think they were out. All these animals are very cool. I love every animal here at the San Diego Zoo. but seeing a lot of them may trick you into thinking of nature conservation as something that only involves these exotic species from faraway places. But a lot of the work that the San Diego Zoo does involves protecting a local species found right here in the Southwest Hub, which encapsulates the southwestern regions of North America. Because a lot of these animals right here in our backyard need our help just as much. Now we do have a great example of one of those local species up on the top of this tree to our right. This is a California condor. It's one of the largest birds in California with a wingspan of about 8 feet across. And back in 1982, they were right on the brink of extinction. There was only 22 California condors remaining in the whole world. So the San Diego Zoo collaborated with the Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Los Angeles Zoo to start a breeding program for these condors in a last attempt to save their species from extinction. And by working together, we've been able to increase their population from just 22 back in the 80s to now more than 500. And a few hundred of those are actually living back out in the wild now, where they're slowly reestablishing a naturally breeding population in the wilderness, which is really cool to see. That is the long-term goal for a lot of these endangered species.
Put him right to sleep.
Now, it's not as simple as just increasing their population, though. You also have to fix some of the problems that made them so endangered in the first place. In the case of those condors, they are scavengers, and unfortunately they were scavenging a lot of carcasses left behind by hunters. They were getting lead poisoning from the bullets, and also feeding that lead to their chicks by mistake, which was killing them as well.
Just for listening.
California as a whole has actually banned the use of lead bullets for recreational hunting, and that's why California is one of the only places you can find California condors in the wild today. Although they are also hanging out in a couple national parks, like Grand Canyon National Park, so you might see some over there as well. Now, if all that talk of saving local species has gotten you a little bit inspired to do some conservation work of your own, it's really easy to get started if you're working with something small, like butterflies, just as endangered as a lot of these very exotic animals you'll see around the zoo today. Now, all that said, we do have a lot more exotic species to see from the bus. That's usually what you come to a zoo for. We're passing the meerkats on the right here. Get a nice look at the meerkats. You might have noticed they have some very dark fur around their eyes. That dark fur absorbs a lot of sunlight, which reduces the glare in their eyes. And that's very important for a meerkat, because they spend a lot of their day scanning the horizon and searching for predators. And as soon as they see a predator, they have to be able to warn the rest of the colony. They really can't have that glare distracting them. That's why they've got that dark fur around their eyes. You'll see that on a lot of mammals. Now on the right here, we're passing by a bird from Africa. These are the trumpeter hornbills. You can see two of them on that branch there. These two are actually a mating pair. This species mates for life, and those two have been together for many, many years. They've had many chicks together over the years. And they've been working on a new nest, so we're keeping an eye out for more chicks, but we haven't seen any eggs yet, so we might have to wait till next year. Now as we go down this hill, we're going to shift focus over to plants for a while. This forest on our left has 28 different species of banana trees in it. Whoa. There's also papayas, bamboo, there's dragon fruits growing over here as well. We grow a lot of fruits, vegetables, and grasses right here on zoo grounds in order to feed to our animals, which reduces the need for importing a lot of that stuff. This area to our right is one of the coolest parts of the zoo to explore for anyone interested in plants. These are the Ethiopian highlands. There's more than 100 species of African plants growing over there. One of the coolest plants in this part of the zoo is called the African woods cycad, which is the rarest species we have at the San Diego Zoo. There's only 11 in the whole world, and one of them is coming up on the right here pretty soon. Cycads are very interesting plants because they're divided into either males or females, whereas most plants are both at the same time. And unfortunately today, all 11 remaining wood cycads are males, so they are considered functionally extinct with no more female plants to mate with. If you want to see the plant I'm talking about before it's extinct, it's in this rocky area to our right here. Behind these trees, you're looking for a huge dark green plant. It looks kind of like the top of a palm tree, but down on the ground. It's a little easier to see once we're a little further ahead, about here, and you look sort of behind the bus. That huge plant looks like the top of a palm tree, but down on the ground. The African woods cycad. Now as we go around this corner here, we are approaching my favorite part of the tour. Anyone following along on your map, we're about to go down Center Street, which goes through the center of the zoo. Center Street has changed names many times over the years though. One of the oldest names for this hill was Fern Canyon, because one of the first plant conservation projects here at the zoo involved planting a lot of rare fern species on this hill. And a lot of those ferns are still growing today, more than 80 years later. So if you do come back here on foot, check out Fern Canyon Trail if you're interested in seeing some of those really old ferns that were planted all the way back in the 1930s. Now another name you'll see for this hill on a lot of old maps of the zoo is Bear Canyon. There have always been bears living down here on this hill, and there are still several species living down here today. So hopefully we'll see a few of those those bears as we go down the hill. Now this first bear coming up on the right is actually one of the most exciting habitats in the whole zoo right now. This is where Shala, the sloth bear, lives, and she's currently living here with her 2 cubs that were born back in December. And it looks like the cubs are being very rowdy off on the left there. I'll inch up for those of you in the back to see. The cubs are named Kumar and Shahani. One is a boy, one is a girl. Now you'll notice the sloth bear doesn't look a whole lot like a sloth. So how do they get that name, sloth bear? It's a pretty poorly chosen name. The name comes from 2 things. One is their huge claws that kind of look like the claws of a sloth. And the other is that mom will carry her cubs around on her back. It's sort of like how a sloth carries its baby. Other than that though, that's where the similarities end. Those claws are not used for hanging, they're used for digging. They can dig into the dirt, trees, logs, whatever else, to try to find ants, termites, and other insects, which are their favorite foods. You might have seen they had a pretty long snout, which is a very long tongue inside. It's great for catching those insects to like.
Oh,
Now,
look,
this species
look,
of bear
Jess.
might be a little more familiar to you. These are the North American grizzly
This
bears.
is a bear,
Now,
grizzly
these 2
bear.
are named Scout and Montana. They are
That's
twin
Montana,
brothers,
Scout.
and they're another example of rescues that we have here at the zoo. These 2 were rescued together from just outside of Yellowstone National Park.
There's
They were being
one.
raised by their mom out there, but she was
And there's
only
one
teaching
down
them
there.
how to get food from humans, whether that be from dumpsters, campsites, handouts from people directly. They didn't know how to get any food from natural sources, and they kept having close calls interacting with people. And that could lead to something dangerous either for the bears or for the people. So the Department of Fish and Wildlife attempted to relocate the bears, bring them further into the wilderness, see if they would focus on more natural food sources. They tried this multiple times, and every time the bears found their way right back into towns, right back into campsites. They really were not interested in natural food sources, only in people. So after a few tries, the San Diego Zoo was contacted as a potential home for them, and they've lived a nice peaceful life here together ever since. It's pretty uncommon for male adult grizzly bears to live together, but since these brothers have been together their whole lives, they do get along very well. We've actually given them many chances to separate into different habitats because we figured they would want to when they reached full
Oh, in the
size,
back.
but they've always chosen to stay
On the right
together, so
side.
they share these 2 habitats here. So with a nice last look at the grizzly bears, and we're going to continue on down the hill. There are 2 more bears that we might be able to see if we're lucky, but they are both a little bit shy. This first one coming up on the right is named Kartik, and he's actually our male sloth bear, so he's the father of the cubs that we saw at the top of the hill. So
Oh,
keep an eye out for
wow.
Kartik down here. Looks like he's right up close behind these bushes here. It might be tricky for those of you on the lower deck to see. You might have to scan them. But keep an eye out for Kartik here. But we already got a nice look at his cubs, so we'll probably continue on ahead in just a moment. Might not seem fair to some of you
So
that
this
mom
is a
has to raise the
sloth
cubs
bear.
by
This is
herself.
sloth bear.
Dad is down here doing whatever he wants. In zoos, it is a little unfair, but out in the wild, usually Dad is pretty tired because he actually has to fight the other males to prove that he's worth mating with. So usually males will be injured, they'll be very tired, all kinds of rough work that they go through before the babies are born. And then mom has to raise the cubs by herself. Not saying it's totally fair, I know raising kids is tough. I'm just trying to explain it a little bit. So we had a nice last look at Kartik here, and there is one last bear down here, and he's actually my favorite bear in the whole zoo. But it looks like he might not be out in the open right now. This is where Turbo lives. Turbo is a
Turbo.
male Andean bear. Looks like some of you guys might be able to see him. He usually hangs out in his cave back there, up on that platform in the top right corner. But his name's Turbo, like I said, he's an Andean bear. Andean bears are named after the Andes Mountains of South America.
See him.
And they're the only species of bear found in South America. They're also one of the most arboreal species of bear, which means they are excellent climbers. They love to be up high in the trees a lot of the time. Unfortunately, though, a lot of those trees that they rely on are being cut down every year. Not just for harvesting paper, but also for growing coffee beans on the cleared land. So one way that you can help support the Andean bears and lots of other species in South America is by purchasing shade-grown coffee, which is grown under the forest canopy without chopping down those trees first. That way you still get your coffee, and the Andean bears get to keep their trees as well. Now there are actually 2 more bear species at the San Diego Zoo, but neither of them are visible from the bus. One of them is the sun bear, which lives in this forest to our right. So if you come back here on foot, use that walking path that goes into the forest, you can see Marcella, the sun bear, in there. And the other bear species is the panda bears on Panda Ridge. I'll talk about them in just a second. Now, like I said, we can't see the sun bear from the bus, but we can see some monkeys from the bus. If you look way back there, that monkey, those monkeys up in the trees are called French langurs. It's a very endangered species of monkey. We actually had 3 babies born here at the zoo last year, so keep an eye out for them if you're over here on foot. And then as we go further down the hill, there's 2 more monkeys that you might be able to see. One of them is the Angolan colobus monkey, which is mostly black with some white fur on its shoulders. And then the other one is the mandrill. And I actually see those people are taking a look at the mandrill right now.
Look
If
at
you
that
ever
guy.
seen The Lion King, that's what Rafiki is. He's
Look
a
at
mandrill,
him.
that
Look
bright
at
red
his
nose,
paint
the
on
really
his face.
cool coloration on
Look at his
face.
paint on his
Try and
face,
see if you
yeah?
can spot the mandrill down there. And then at the bottom of the hill, you'll see that there is a fork in the road here. Taking a left turn at the bottom leads down the Asian Passage, which is where you can see the snow leopard, the Amur leopards, and the pandas on Panda Ridge. If any of you have not seen the pandas yet today, keep in mind that Panda Ridge closes earlier than the rest of the zoo. The zoo is closing at 5 p.m. today, but Panda Ridge is closing at 4:30 p.m. So make sure you're in line to see the pandas before 4:30 p.m. or else they will not let you inside to see them. Even if you're just 1 minute late, they will not let you in to see those pandas. But we're taking a right turn. We're going to go behind Africa Rocks here and hopefully see some cool African animals. That dark tunnel there leads to an underwater viewing window of the first animal on Africa Rocks. So that might give you a little clue as to what it's going to be. It's an underwater animal found in Africa. Take a look out the left side of the bus. Scan the rocks in the distance. You're looking for some black and white African penguins over there.
Oh, yeah.
Most people picture Antarctica when they think of penguins, but only about a quarter of penguin species really live in Antarctica. The rest are found all across the southern hemisphere, in different parts of South America, Australia, New Zealand, or in the case of those ones there, Africa. Now as we go further up the hill, we're going to drive past the lemur habitat next. Africa Rocks is home to 5 different species of lemurs, which might sound like a lot, but it's a small fraction of the more than 100 species found in Madagascar. Unfortunately today, every species of lemur is endangered, and a large reason for that is deforestation as a result of mining operations on Madagascar. So one way that you can help support the lemurs, like these red-ruffed lemurs here in that tree, is by purchasing lab-grown gemstones instead of gemstones that were mined from the earth. The lab-grown ones are usually higher quality, more affordable, and they cause a lot less destruction to the environment, which helps out the lemurs and all the other animals on Madagascar. Now that was actually a very lucky sighting. Those red-ruffed lemurs really don't come over to this side of the habitat very often. Usually they're down below in the shade. That's probably the first time I've seen them from the bus in over a month, so that's pretty cool to see. On the left here, we're driving past a monkey. It's called a vervet monkey. There's a whole family of them that live over there, so if you go back on foot, keep an eye out for them. They're one of the only mammals to actually have blue fur, so keep an eye out for that blue on them. It'll be on their belly and on another part of their body as well. And as we go further up the hill, on the left here, we're driving past the Amur leopards. Amur leopards are one of the most endangered mammals on Earth. There's less than 100 remaining in the wild today. The San Diego Zoo is part of the Amur leopard species survival plan. We've had 6 cubs born here over the last 7 years, but there's still a long way to go to raise their population and also to restore their habitat in Eastern Asia. Now as we go further up the hill, on the right side of the bus, we're going to drive past a whole bunch of plants from Australia. You'll see several species of acacias, several species of eucalyptus trees, but there's 2 plants in particular that I want to point out to you. One of them is a pretty small tree here. It's got little flowers in it that look like pink cotton balls. That is pink melaleuca, also known as pink tea tree. That's where tea tree oil comes from. And then on the right here, behind this golf cart, you can see that shrub with those pink flowers on it. That is Grevillea. Grevillea produces a ton of nectar, so it's very popular with pollinators. In Australia, it gets pollinated by hundreds of species of insects, small birds, and small mammals. On the left through that window there, you might see some baboons. We've actually had 2 baby baboons born this year so far. I just saw one of them hanging out over there with its mom, so keep an eye out for them if you come back on foot. And we're going to actually stop here for a second to take a look at the koalas on the right here. If you look in between all these trees, you're going to see some big metal umbrellas over there. And underneath those umbrellas, you might be able to see some gray fur. If you see any gray fur, then that is a koala you're looking at. This is specifically where all the female koalas live. Now, we actually had 2 baby koalas born last year. One of them is still hanging out in mom's pouch, so you probably won't see that one. But the other one is fully grown now, almost. She's walking around, climbing around in the trees all by herself. She's left the pouch for good, so keep an eye out for her if you come back on foot. Now, we're going to go around this corner one more time, and I'm going to point out one last area that you should definitely check out after the tour if you haven't already. This road to our right leads to the urban jungle. It's a very flat part of the zoo, so it's easy to access, and it is home to a lot of our largest animals, including the rhino, giraffes, zebra, cheetah, also some smaller ones like the African porcupines, the binturong, really cool animals in the urban jungle. And earlier this year, on the 4th of July, we actually had a baby giraffe born here, and he's the largest baby giraffe we've ever had here at the San Diego Zoo. He was born 1 month overdue, so a 16-month pregnancy, and he was 6 foot 10 inches, 198 pounds at birth. So huge baby giraffe. Definitely check him out if you haven't already today. He's about 8 feet tall now, but he still has a long way to go until he's full size at 17 feet. Now on the left here, this is our last chance to see animals. We're passing some Australian aviaries. So keep an eye out for some of those cool Australian birds, even if you didn't see any. You probably heard a couple of them chirping. And then that is going to bring us to the end of the tour.
And that was a great
Now, anyone sitting
presentation.
on the left,
Put
make
him
sure you keep those
right
arms
to
inside
sleep.
while I pull over here.